Yes, it's John G. Sutton. Tales from the jails. Yeah. And I don't know if you've been reading the comments, but a number of people have been making criticisms of the fact that I was a hospital officer. Somebody has been saying things like the worst bastards in the prison system were the hospital staff. Well, I don't think we really were. We were trying to do a job. I was personally trying to do a job and would only administer psychotropic drugs via injection if I received the written instructions of a medical doctor. So we weren't doing this willy-nilly. Prison staff didn't just go and get yourselves a syringe anyway. But whilst I was serving as a hospital officer, I received a number of very, what I would say to be, death threats. You know, people, inmates who were threatening to kill me. And these weren't empty threats, because these particular prisoners had already demonstrated the fact that they would murder people if they didn't like them, or whatever they wanted to do, whatever reason they had for murdering people. But they were threatening to murder me. One of the big ones that threatened to murder me was the Goit Valley murderer. I've previously mentioned him here, a man called Peter Bailey from the Buxton area. He had a little gang of acolytes, and he'd been in Broadmoor. He said he was a friend of Reggie Cray, and sort of tough guy. So he set about capturing people off the streets around about the Buxton area, taking them to a woodland known as the Goit Clough Valley. Yeah, Goit Clough, or the Goit Valley, where him and his little gang tied these innocent young men to trees, sexually molested them, and then subsequently strangled them to death and left them for dead, tied to the trees in the Goit Valley. They did 2 of these murders, yeah. And eventually a guy that they trapped got in the car, got him into the Goit Valley, and he escaped. And he ran, I believe he ran naked through the woods and sought help. And that's how Peter Bailey, who was taken to Buxton Magistrates Court and committed for trial to the Crown Court in Manchester in the early 80s, around about 83, I think. And he was eventually inside Strange Ways, where I met him, and he was a big bastard who didn't want to follow orders. I've previously told the story about how I insisted that he get himself dressed because he was in strip cell conditions. And when I took him his clothing, he refused to get dressed on his transport to Risley, saying he wasn't going to Risley. And I assisted him out of his cell, helped him, you know, to get out of his cell and into the back of the van, taking him to Risley. Unfortunately for Peter Bailey, he left his clothing behind. So from Strange Ways to Risley, he went stark bollock naked. I had tried to get him his clothes, you know. I wouldn't do that to anybody, but I had to do it to Peter Bailey. And he threatened he'd come back and murder me. Said, if it takes 20 years, Sutton, I'll come back and murder you. Well, Peter Bailey died in prison, so he ain't coming back to murder me, is he? Quite a few of the others were not best pleased with my attention. But believe me, I didn't go in there to entertain myself and abuse inmates, you know. I was in there to do a job. One of them that definitely didn't like me was Frankie Fraser, because everybody else, well, the chief officers and all that, were suckling up to him, saying things to me like, it's only Frankie, you know, he's all right, don't lock him up. You must be joking. I'm not allowing Frankie Fraser to go walking round the landings. He'd come behind me. He blinded some poor officer at Durham. hit him with a metal chair from behind. Face to face, he couldn't do much, but I reckon he'd take some battering. You know, I don't think he would just go down with a slap. Oh no. I didn't actually put my hands on Frankie Fraser. Didn't need to. I just said to him, Fraser, get in your cell, and shut the door. And he went to his cell, but he said to me, if you want the door shut, you shut it. That's what you're getting paid for. Frankie Fraser didn't like me. He didn't make any formal complaints about me because he knew that they would just laugh them off. Seriously. The other guy that we've mentioned him as well on here before, Paul Sykes. Yeah, Paul Sykes didn't complain. It wasn't my idea to hold him down, and the medical doctor said, yeah, give him the needle, so that's what he got. And he was all right after that. Bit quiet, you know, taking his 25 mils of Largactil 3 times a day. Seriously, 25 mils. Used to give it like 25 mils and a cough. Makes you, I mean, let's face it, if you're going into work, would you like to go rolling around the floor, exchanging punches with the likes of Paul Sykes when you've got a 14-hour shift on your hands? No, you wouldn't, would you? Seriously, you couldn't do that. A number of people on here, somebody called Ping Pong Kelly or somebody, has been criticising me. Well, Ping Pong, I did what I had to do. And a lot of these people who are criticising staff, one of them who rightly objected to the conditions and smashed the place up in the Strangeways riot was Alan Lord. Now, I have never met Alan Lord, but Alan Lord said that the staff were brutal and unkind and treated him with disrespect. I expect that the staff did. I never met Alan Lord, but then all the prison staff that I met hadn't murdered anybody. And that's what Alan Lord did. He went armed with a knife, and during a robbery or some kind of altercation that he was involved in, he knifed a man to death and subsequently ended up in Strangeways and didn't like the conditions. Number of people like that who get themselves into prison through horrendous offences and then complain about the conditions. And I don't blame them, because I found the conditions to be completely intolerable, and that was for me working in them. So if I'd have been locked up in them, then I would have felt extremely aggrieved. But nonetheless, that was it. The thing is about inmates complaining, whilst I was there, their complaints were heard by the governor, Norman Brown. And in my experience, nobody actually had any kind of result that they could say, oh, this is a result, you know, I complained about this. One of the staff, believe this or not, a principal officer, was keen on motorbikes and brought his motorbike in to the prison when he was on the night shift. The officer in charge of the night shift, and worked on it, you know, stripped it down and did some work while it was while the shift was going on. And then about 2 o'clock in the morning, when he put it all back together again, booted the motorbike up and rode around the prison on his motorbike. Well, next day, of course, number of prisoners complaining to the governor, who was Norman Brown. Impossible. Nobody brings motorbikes into the prison. That's absolute nonsense. I've checked with the principal officer in charge of the prison last night. No, nothing, no such incident happened. You're imagining this. Get out. Next. Yeah, you're complaining about it, but yeah, it didn't happen. I've already ascertained that. Get out. Next. So you were wasting your time. Norman Brown himself once brought a brass band into the prison about midnight on New Year's Eve. Brass band from the club. He was tanked up. Yeah, managed to get in the prison with the brass band. They opened it up for him, seriously, locked down, and Norman Brown had the brass band in the middle of the rotunda at Strangeways, blasting out trumpets, drums, seriously, at midnight. It echoed, right, everybody would be awake with that. Next morning, Norman Brown was in. I don't know how he did it. He must have had a marvellous abilities to recuperate. And he was taking governor's complaints. Coming in, yes, what's the problem? Yeah, 1 o'clock you were woke up by a what? A brass band? Are you mad? No brass bands in here. Get out. Next. Oh, you want to complain about a brass band? I can assure you, no brass band in here. I've checked. Get out. Next. Seriously. That's the way it worked. Good old strange ways. No point in complaining in them days. No point at all. Happy days. I mean, if you complain too much, get down the block, D1, meet the school bully, the black dog and the Chinese money box. Get yourself something to complain about then. It's John G. Sutton here. Hey, subscribe, maybe. Yeah, subscribe down here, yeah, something like that. Tales from the Jails. Thank you.